Someone said you were thinking about buying a house. You want to buy a house, huh? Do you know what you're in for? Do you have any idea the steps that are necessary for you to get a house and not pull your hair out? Well, my name is Steve Duncan. I live in Southwest Florida, and I have decided that I'm going to put up a few videos to try to help you make the process a little less complicated. Okay? What's the first thing you do? Well, you start looking, I suppose. You start thinking to yourself, I want one of those. I want a house. And the next thing you have to decide is, how am I going to get it? What are the steps necessary for me to get a house? And here's something I know about you. 97% of you borrow money to buy that house. So this advice that I'm going to give you is my opinion, my advice. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an accountant. I'm not a title company. I'm not a mortgage company. I'm not a credit bureau. I am none of those. I am one person looking straight at you, telling you I can give you some tips or my opinion on how to make this process not so daunting. And a lot of you, almost 50%, say in a survey that you thought the process was terrible, awful. And 50% of you said, wasn't that bad. So why don't we get into the 50% that said it wasn't that bad, and let me give you a few tips on what you need to do, the steps necessary for you to have a pleasant or almost pleasant experience buying a home and getting a mortgage. Let's move to the office and talk about it, okay? Well, the way I see it, you're going to have some very interesting people that you are going to be interfacing with if you're going to pursue the idea of buying a house and obtaining a mortgage to pay for it. There are several places that are going to be in your life, whether you meet them personally or not. They're going to affect your life when you buy a house and apply for a mortgage. One would be the credit bureau. There are three of them. There is TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. And then there is that little thing called the FICO score. Fair Isaac Company, FICO, F-I-C-O, Fair Isaac Company. And what they do is they average out all three credit reports, and they give you a number, a grade, if you will. And the grade goes from A, B, C, D, E, F. Not quite that simple. They give you a score of somewhere around 500 in the 600s, and the 700s, and the 800s. Do you know your FICO score? If you're applying for a loan, for a mortgage, for a home, that is probably going to be one of the first things you're going to be wanting to look at to determine whether you have the ability to buy a loan or get a loan, buy a house, or not. Your FICO score. We'll cover that in a video coming up. Next thing we got to talk about is stable monthly income. Do you have 2 years past history of income, and can you verify that you're going to be stable for the next 12 months? We'll do a video on that coming up also, on income, the various kinds of income that they will allow. Next, you're going to talk about the loan you're going to get, which means You've got to put some money down or no down. So basically there are 4 or 5 different kinds of loans. There's typically the 20% down or an 80% loan to value. The loan to the value. 80% of 100% is 20% down. So 80% LTV, loan to value. Then we go into the 90, 95, 97, and the no downs. And the no downs, there are some out there like Veterans Administration, and the USDA has some programs for rural properties. As a general rule, you're going to have to put down probably, as a general rule, at least 3%. Okay? Now, in some cases, that can be a gift. And we'll talk about income and down payment and money in another video coming up. The last thing we want to talk about is the house value itself. The value of the house. The house can sometimes mess up the whole deal. You know, there was an old rule back when I was in the savings loan business when we were keeping loans for ourselves, and it basically said, good property, poor borrower, make the deal. Good borrower, poor property, make the deal. Poor borrower, poor house, don't make the deal. So a lot of times the house has something to do with it, and you're going to be involved in the appraisal and how long it takes him to get it and what's holding you up from closing the loan. He's busy. Not very many appraisers are left out there. That's going to be an issue that's going to cause a thorn in your side. And, of course, if the appraiser goes out and says it needs this or it needs that, or you have an inspector independent from the appraiser going out, he can mess up the deal. And we'll talk about that in a future video, okay? And the last thing we're going to talk about is, in another video coming up, is what is a mortgage, what is a note, and what is a deed? And what do all 3 documents mean to you? And how do they affect your life when you actually own the home? And how do you maintain the home? And how do you keep the home? And so these 3 documents, you at least need to be aware of what's in them and what you're signing at closing, because at closing, there's that stack of documents that you go through very quickly. You got to know before you get there. All right? All right, let's finish this up. Remember, this is buyduncan.com. I'm Duncan, and I have a website, buyduncan.com. And these YouTube videos that we're putting up right now are Follow the Money. You want to buy a house? You're going to need a mortgage. And I have 30 years of mortgage experience. I'd like to help you through that process if you don't mind. And if you have any questions, leave a question below and we'll try to answer them as we go along. But our next video coming up would be on credit and the FICO score. This is about you, not about the house. You have to be ready before you apply for a loan. So let's make sure you are, and let's make sure that you see the next video, the FICO score. Follow the money. Let's buy a house. FICO. See you the next time.